Hey guys, Editing Karen here. You guys always ask for Editing Karen. I wish I was here under better circumstances, but I just wanted to let you guys know this video is pre-filmed and I would have loved to have my Kaleidos review up for you guys today, but I really haven't been in the mood to film, so I'm hoping I'll get that done maybe sometime this week or it'll be next weekend, so I'm sorry in advance. I really like the collection, so I really want to talk about it on my channel in like a formal video. Just know that I'm just not in the right headspace to film it. So this video is pre-filmed and look forward to that video on Kaleidos. I'm gonna do 3 looks, 1 palette. So those take me a little bit longer to film and I'm really excited for it. So I want to have that energy when I make that video. So thanks for watching and I will see you guys soon.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm filming a video inspired by Julia Mazzucato here on YouTube. If you guys haven't checked out Julia's channel, you definitely should. But when I saw her film this video, I thought, hey, I should do that. That sounds like a whole lot of fun. So here I am. Just to go over the concept with you guys, basically what she talked about was what eyeshadow palettes she would declutter from her current makeup collection if she was to like lose all her palettes, like which ones would she pick to actually voluntarily kind of give up. So you guys know there's so many videos where people talk about the 10 palettes they would keep if they were to lose all their eyeshadow palettes, or what palettes they would buy if they were to lose their whole makeup collection, things like that. And this is kind of a little bit of a twist, and I like this video because it's kind of a fun one because I hate picking my favorite, so kind of picking an unfavorite from each brand that I own more than one eyeshadow palette from. So I stood around, looked at my eyeshadow palettes, which I keep in a big bookshelf here on the side of my beauty room, and I picked out palettes that definitely are on the chopping block. I just haven't gotten rid of them because some of these are pretty new to my collection. Some are just kind of part of a bigger collection, so I wouldn't see myself getting rid of them. But if you guys are interested in seeing the palettes I'm about to discuss, just keep watching. Okay, let's start off with Huda Beauty. So I have quite a few Huda palettes. I'm a big fan of Huda Beauty's makeup line. I like her foundation. She makes a lot of really good complexion products, lipsticks, like the whole gamut of Huda Beauty is pretty great. But there are these palettes called the Obsession palettes, and I feel like I've had the most hit or miss luck with them. The first collection that they came out with I didn't really love, then I liked her gemstone obsessions, then I didn't end up liking the neons, and then I ended up loving her nude mini eyeshadow palette. So the one I would get rid of that's currently in my collection is this guy. This is her neon pink obsession palette that she came out with. I love this color story so much, but I have such a hard time with these eyeshadows. If you guys remember my first impressions with this palette, oh my gosh, I was on the struggle bus with these things, but this is such a cute color combo and I just want it to work so badly on my skin tone, but I just don't love it. I feel like I have to struggle with it, and therefore this would be the one I would declutter from all of my Huda Beauty eyeshadow palettes if I were to declutter them. The next brand I decided to go with is Juvia's Place, and Juvia's Place and I have been in a long-term, very committed relationship. Recently though, I've been a little bit more choosy with my collection, and at one point I had everything they had launched, and then I kind of hit this point in my life where I'm like, I'm not going to hold on to all of these eyeshadow palettes just to say that I have every single Juvia's Place eyeshadow palette. So my collection is a lot smaller now, but I picked out this palette because I actually remember Angie talking about this in her indie eyeshadow palette collection, and I'm like, wait a second, I have that palette too and I never use it. And I remember this at one point was one of my favorite Juvia's Place palettes because I love this like corally orange color and this, of course, chartreusey gold green color. Those two colors were such favorites of mine that I like was really happy I owned this. But now that I've had a few other palettes enter my life and I'm really working on refining my Juvia's Place palette, this one's kind of sunk to the bottom, and I actually feel like I could get rid of that one and be completely fine, but it's currently still in my collection, so that is my palette from Juvia's Place that I would be okay getting rid of. So the next one I picked out that I would get rid of from all of my Give Me Glow palettes is the Staple palette. Now this one is an older palette from them. I don't even think they sell this anymore, but I bought this because of Makeup Struggles. I don't know if you guys remember her, but she was this amazing YouTuber. She doesn't make content anymore, but she really took YouTube by storm and I miss her so much. But she talked about Give Me Glow and this palette, and she was the first one I remember mentioning Give Me Glow that really got me interested in it. So I picked this palette up, but honestly I hardly ever use it. I've maybe swatched it and used it maybe 5 times total. I don't really like their original formula, so I would give this up, but they don't make this palette anymore, so I don't want to. But I like their newer formula better, so I would never give up their newer eyeshadow palettes. But this one I could definitely see myself getting rid of. And yeah, I don't know. It's a beautiful color story, but I just never reach for it, so it's an easy pass on for me. Next, let's do a ColourPop palette because I do have quite a big ColourPop collection as well. In 2019, I felt like I was buying every single ColourPop collection, like something from every single ColourPop collection. So in 2020, I tried to be better about it. And I've only bought one thing from ColourPop this year so far, which I think is quite the achievement. I'm a little bit sad that I did break the one time, but I did pick up the Mint to Be palette just because I did think it was a very beautiful palette. And so the one I would get rid of, there's quite a few I would be okay getting rid of, but the one I thought I would mention in this video is the Salahi Palette. This was their collab with Becky G. I like this palette because it has such beautiful packaging, and you know, it has the pop of blue, which I'm still a sucker for a pop of blue. I know it's kind of a cliche thing, and so many people kind of giggle when they see like a pop of blue in palettes now because at some point like everyone did it. So it's an easy one to pass on because I don't really ever use it, but I also think the packaging is really pretty, which is probably why it hasn't made it onto my Poshmark, because I'm pretty ruthless when it comes to things like ColourPop, BH, Juvia's Place. Like, I can get rid of those things without overthinking it. It's definitely harder with some brands, but yeah, that's my ColourPop palette that I would get rid of. So here's one that was really tough for me because I swear I love all my Futurism palettes from Kaleidos, but if I had to pick a least favorite of my favorites, it would be this one, and it's only because it's more of a basic color story than the other ones, but this one is still such a beautiful neutral palette. If you are intimidated by some of the color stories like Kaleidos has with their other Futurism palettes, I would definitely recommend this one. This red and this silver are probably two of the most beautiful reds and silvers in many palettes across the beauty scape right now. So yeah, they're wonderful, and I like their mattes, I like their shimmers, great texture, but if I had to pick, this would be the one I would be getting rid of, I guess. So that is my thoughts on that one. And then you guys probably already guessed, if I had to get rid of one Natasha Denona palette, it would be this guy. This is the Star palette. I talk about this palette every single time I do like a favorite and least favorite palette video, and Natasha Denona is included. I kind of feel guilty. There are some other Natasha Denona palettes I would get rid of, like my Mini Nudes. I didn't really love that, but that one is sentimental to me, so I wouldn't actually get rid of it. But this one is definitely on the chopping block, has been on the chopping block for quite some time, and I don't know, I'm not ready to like part with it yet, but it's very easily my least favorite Natasha Denona palette. So yeah, that is the Star palette. And it's freaking expensive too, so I definitely wish I hadn't spent the money on that. So let's talk about Anastasia. So this one's kind of an easy one. I have pretty much most of the Anastasia palettes. Again, that was a brand I was very loyal to. I was collecting them. And then one day I was like, you know what? There's no point me holding on to all of these palettes. I might as well pass them on. So I have passed on a few of my Anastasia palettes, but this is one that I keep thinking I'm going to go back to, but honestly I never do. I don't think I've used it ever since I like maybe did a video with this. I haven't gone back to it. It's just one of those palettes that just continues to sit on my shelf and gather dust. So this is the Riviera palette by ABH. This is the one that everyone kind of whines about because I think everyone was so excited for ABH to do color, but then it wasn't that same great ABH formula that we're used to. So this palette definitely got a lot of shit when it originally launched. And yeah, I don't know. It's like still part of a collection now. So I'm like, not planning on getting rid of it, but it's definitely my least favorite ABH palette. Okay, so I have two picks from Pat McGrath because I did my least favorite, or the one I would declutter out of my black ones, and then I picked least favorite out of the 6-pan. So for my least favorite out of these Mothership palettes, I picked the Divine Rose. This is the palette number 1. She is launching a second version of this particular palette soonish. Here is this palette. And I don't know, this is just boring to me, an everyday kind of color story, and to me there isn't anything like that interesting in here. Now, everything that I don't like about this palette, I realize is some of the things that other people love about this palette, which is the beauty of makeup, because when I put makeup on, it's all about the fantasy for me, but for some people, makeup is just makeup, and they like to wear it just to, you know, enhance their looks and make it an everyday thing and go to work, and that's their ride or die palette. For me, it's like all about the color stories and adding the earrings and pairing the lippies, and it's more than just a process for me. So I think everything that I hate about that palette is everything that other people may love about that palette, and that's totally fine. So my pick for the 6-pan palettes, and the one I would get rid of, is this guy. This is the Pat McGrath Mothership Sublime Golden Opulence eyeshadow palette, and this is the one they came out with for celebrating the Lunar New Year in 2020. So I typically wouldn't have bought this, but I was just in the phase to pick up, you know, everything Pat McGrath came out with, which is not usually how I am, but I just felt like getting this because she had just come out with her Star Wars palettes as well. And so I was like, ooh, you know, I was like, oh, let me get it, let me collect it, let me collect it. But this palette is really nice. It's just not something I reach for. If I wanted to try Pat McGrath and I wanted something every day, I would totally recommend this to you guys. I have seen Pat McGrath do a few sales, probably because of coronavirus, you know. They're trying to maybe clear out inventory, so you might be able to snag this for a good deal. Keep your eyes on that, but it's a perfectly fine palette. It's just, again, it's not a part of like that fantasy makeup collection because I love like interesting textures, interesting shades. This one is definitely more of an everyday palette. Nothing wrong with everyday palettes because I definitely have a ton of those too. But with Pat McGrath, I'm always looking for that extra special thing that makes it a little bit different from like the Anastasias and the Too Faced, you know, Sephora brands of the world. So that is my take on that. So the next brand I'm going to talk about is Kristen Dominique Cosmetics, and I have quite a few of her palettes. I think I maybe have 1 or 2 that I don't own, but if I could get rid of one palette, it would be the Berries and Cream. And you guys have heard me kind of talk about this. This is definitely on the chopping block for 2020. I really haven't bought myself to go back and use this. It's just not my favorite color story. I think it's very dull. It kind of looks cool tone to me, in my opinion, and I think that makes me want to reach for it even less. I love the packaging, I like the concept, but overall it doesn't really excite me, and I really don't find myself reaching for this palette. So we are down to my last 2 brands. So the next one I'm going to talk about is Jeffree Star. This is a Jeffree Star Jawbreaker palette. Now, I have pretty much owned all of Jeffree's eyeshadow palettes at some time or the other. I have a few less now because I've decluttered and sold some of them. They weren't getting enough attention from me. This palette was one where I just like fell for the hype. I bought the Jawbreaker palette. I bought the makeup bag because I love like that splatter packaging and things like that. And honestly, I don't go back to this palette. I keep telling myself I should. I think the fact that it's such a jumbled up rainbow is really off-putting to me. And I didn't necessarily love the formula either. So yeah, I can definitely see myself actually getting rid of this palette in the next couple of months. I think probably, you know, by the end of 2020 I would have made up my mind. But yeah, I don't know. She's big and she's loud, but I just never end up grabbing for this. Yeah, I want to love it, but I just don't. I like some of his other color stories a little bit better. I think the Alien palette's probably my favorite palette from him. And then this one is just kind of like, it's kind of there. I very recently made a very bold move and decluttered my Blood Sugar palette, which I actually really loved the Blood Sugar palette when I first got it. It was like my favorite Jeffree Star palette. And then I used it very recently in preparation for the Bloodlust palette that was coming out. And then I don't know if the formula had changed. It just didn't feel the same. And so I'm like, you know what? Don't question your impulse or your need to get rid of things, just get rid of it, because I'll be a lot happier. And honestly, I haven't really looked back. Every once in a while when somebody comments that blood sugar is their favorite, I'm like, I kind of feel like a little flutter of like, oh, I kind of miss it, but I'm okay. I really am. So that is my pick for Jeffree Star. And then the last brand I want to talk about is Melt. And if I could get rid of a Melt palette, I'd probably get rid of this one. This is the Rust palette. I believe this came out in May. And it's okay, but it's just not my favorite Melt palette. Usually Melt palettes either have a good formula, or they have a good color story, or they have both. And this neither has a good color story nor a good formula, in my opinion. It's very powdery. It's not as powdery as the 420 palette, but it's just not my favorite Melt palette. And honestly, if I could return this and get my money back, I would, but it's past that time, and so I'm gonna just hold on to this, I think, at least until the end of 2020, because I'd probably want to feature it in some kind of end of year video. But yeah, I just would not recommend this, but I know some people really love the Rust palette. I think if you're a neutral gal, it might work perfectly for you, but for me, I'm just like, ugh, I really, really, really wish I hadn't picked that one up. So guys, that is the end of this video. Thank you so, so much for watching. I will go ahead and link Julia Mazzicato's video so you guys can check that one out. She went over a lot of different brands as well. So thank you so, so much for watching. I will see you guys in my next video soon. Bye!